The year is 99. Japanese role-playing games at their golden age. Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, Wild Arms, just to name a few. The original PlayStation neared the end of its life, but it still had a few surprises left. Hidden Among Giants, a game quietly emerges, a JRPG often forgotten by the mainstream, yet remembered by many passionate for its gameplay, story, soundtrack and its remarkable design. A game that planned a prequel, and where one of the main characters, as particular as it may sound, was supposed to be in Super Mario RPG, The Legend of Dragoon. Developed by an internal team at Sony Computer Entertainment, a studio that would later become Sony Interactive Entertainment, the one that we know today, this project stood apart from the rest. It was bold, cinematic, and above all, very experimental. At the heart of it was its director, Yasuyuki Hasabe. Before joining Sony, he spent half a decade at Square, helping shape the golden age of 16-bit RPGs. He had worked on gems such as Final Fantasy V, 6, Super Mario RPG, and even more. He knew the formula. When he joined Sony, he carried that experience and a desire to create something on its own. Development of The Legend of Dragoon began in early 96. Internally, the project was massive. At the heart, there was one of Sony's most expensive productions, a big of 100, big ambitions, and a vision to build a role-playing game that would stand with the very best. But this wasn't just another RPG. Already from the beginning, Hasabe wanted to challenge what a battle system could be, to move beyond the familiar command menus and passive turn that defined the genre. He wanted the player to feel involved. Drawing from his past work, especially Super Mario RPG, Hasabe explored how timing and interaction could bring new life to traditional turn-based combat. He remembered how players reacted to pressing the button at the just right time to land a critical blow. It was simple, yet powerful. Rather than having the player issue an attack command and just watch, we had the ability to press an attack button at the right time to deal a killer blow. Players thought it was really fun. That mechanic became the seed of what we know as the addition system, the feature that make The Legend of Dragoon unique to these very days. From there, the vision expanded. Hasabe imagined transformations, not just as a visual flourish, but as a core part of the player growth. The Dragoon concept was born from his childhood love for the heroes who could transform, like Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and Superman. He wanted player to feel the same power, the thrill of transforming into something greater. But it wasn't easy. Early prototype played almost like an action game, using multiple buttons and complex combinations. It was fast, but not fun. After months of trial and error, the system was simplified. Just one button, one chance, perfectly timed. And finally, after half a year of iterations, the addition system was complete. A system that demanded focus, rewarded skills, and made every strike feel earned. After many discussions and experiments, we decided to keep it simple. One button, one moment. If you press it right, the attack lands. That's how the addition system was born. As development progressed, The Legend of Dragoon continued to grow in scope, ambitions, even size. The late 90s were an era where cinematic storytelling was refined by video games. Titles like Final Fantasy VIII and Metal Gear Solid showed the power of combining gameplay with movie-like cinematics, and The Legend of Dragoon would be no exception. Hasabe explained how this vision took form. There is about 30 minutes of CG footages in the game. Not all of it was done in-house, we outsourced about a quarter of it. Behind those visuals was art director Kenichi Hiwata, a man driven by a simple but powerful idea, pursue reality. Even in a world of dragons and magic, Hiwata wanted everything to feel real. The cities, the landscape, and the people who lived in them. Hasabe trusted him completely, so he stayed out of the cinematic topic. He stated that he made the basic decisions, whether a region should have snow or desert, but he left the design to Hiwata. As the project entered its final year, the focus shifted toward animation and cinematics. Each scene took months to produce, rough and unpolished at first, but slowly coming to life. When the first completed sequence was finally shown, the entire team was stunned. From a small team of dozen in the first year, to 50 by the second and over 80 by the third. It becomes Sony's largest internal project at the time, a massive effort that pushed the limit of PlayStation hardware. So much in fact, that by the time the game was finished, it couldn't fit on a single disc. At first, I suggested 2, but wasn't enough. Then 3, still not enough. The final animation turned out much larger than expected, so we decided on 4 discs. We almost needed 5. Some scenes had to be cut, entire CG sequences lost to the constraint of storage, but even after the cuts, what remained was monumental. 4 discs of story, music, and cinematic ambitions, an achievement that symbolized the peak of PlayStation-era RPGs. For Hasabe, however, The Legend of Dragoon was more than just an ambitious RPG. It was about connection. not just about characters, but between the player and the game itself. In traditional RPG, the player just issue command, but here they participate, pressing at the right moment, landing the blow. They gradually feel as though they were the ones striking the enemy. The player and character became one. Through this, The Legend of Dragoon delivered something few games of each time achieved, a world that feels cinematic and battle system that made every moment personal. Beyond its system and visual, what truly gave The Legend of Dragoon its earth was its cast. Each character, from knights to mercenary to immortals to dragons, played a role in the story and spent thousands of years. When asked about his favorite, Director Hasabe didn't hesitate. Yes, I won. It's Dart. He said with a smile. I think he's a great character, and so is Rose. But interestingly, Dart wasn't meant to be the main character at first. In every draft of the story, Rose was the protagonist. The narrative was revolved around her, a mysterious world burdened by memories of a lost age. Initially, I planned for Rose to be the protagonist. In fact, she's a character that was cut when I was working on Super Mario RPG. At the time I told her, I'll make sure to incorporate you next time. She was the very first character design for The Legend of Dragoon, even before Dart. I've probably put more thoughts into this character than Dart, Hasabe himself admitted. When asked about his favorite location, Hasabe mentioned what simply referred to as the last dungeon. A surreal place where time and space twist and fold upon themselves. It was a reflection of what The Legend of Dragoon often achieved, a moment that felt larger than a screen, surreal yet emotional. When asked about his favorite scene, Hasabe didn't talk about grand battles. Instead, he focused on moments of emotions, loss, memory, and redemption. First of all, life is death, he said. It was very impactful and dramatic. Then came a quiet moments, Dart falling into the sea during the phantom ship sequence. For Rose, watching it unfold triggered memories of her lost lover, Zig. It's a rare scene, Hasabe explained, where Rose shows human emotions, vulnerability. And finally, the ending. The scene where Lloyd gives Dart the spirit of the Divine Dragoon. It may be cliché, he said, but it makes people feel that Lloyd is really a good person. The three scenes, tragedy, reflection, and redemption, that capture the tone of the entire game. As The Legend of Dragoon neared completion, the team ran headfirst into the limit of the late 90s hardware. Memory was scarce, and PlayStation architecture demanded constant trade-off. Original the level cap had been set to 99, standard for RPG of the time, but available memory simply couldn't hold the data. Once the core program was loaded, there wasn't enough room for everything else. The developer trimmed animations, code, and assets wherever possible, until they had to lower the maximum level to 60. It was one of many compromises the team had to make. Even so, progression of Dragoon wasn't just about numbers. Instead of relying on raw level growth, player improved to the game addition system, timed combo attack and reward precisions. Mastering this technique could effectively double a character attack power. Leveling up was lower than most RPGs, but deliberate. The developers wanted each improvement to feel earned. The same philosophy shaped the game's approach to difficulty. Boss fights were designed to test preparation as much as reflexes. Player could carry only 32 items, not because of memory constraint, but by design. It forced them to make choices, what to buy, what to save, what to bring into battles. Without conventional magic, items became the lifeline, creating a loop of scarcity and strategy. Not every ambition made it in. Full voice acting, for example, had been planned but proved impossible. The PlayStation disc could stream both voice audio and game data at once. Adding voice would have broken the flow of gameplay. Other ideas were lost, the same constraint. The team had envisioned a richer world map with unique events that player could discover through exploration. Story hidden in the landscape itself. As the project grew, many of these ideas were quietly left behind. Even performance were negotiations. Battle was intended to run at 60 frames per second, but reduced to 20. Details like flowing water, splashing rivers, or blinking characters animation were stripped away to save space. Despite all of this, the result was still one of the most technically ambitious RPG on the PlayStation 1. 4 discs of pre-rendered beauty, complex battle system, and cinematic storytelling, all pushed to the edge of what the console could handle. Every compromise can be intention, every limitation a creative solution. When asked if there would be another The Legend of Dragoon, Hasabe didn't hesitate. Yes, he promptly said. At least at The Legend of Dragoon 2. I don't know if there will be more after, but at least I will make a second installment. He confirmed that it would, of course, be for PlayStation 2, a new generation that would free him from the constraint that limited the first game. When pressed how far along the project was, Hasabe admitted with a laugh, I've thought the general idea, it's all on my mind. In other words, the prequel existed in its same early conceptual stage The Legend of Dragoon had been 3 years earlier. But this time, the vision was clearer. The basic idea of fight scene and directionality are already in place. You want the battles to feel even more dynamic. I want to make it more three-dimensional, he said, taking advantage of the PS2 hardware. Some old systems like the world map might disappear entirely. That's right, he confirmed when asked it would be no longer necessary. Will the story continue from where the first game ended? No, it will take place before, Hasabe revealed. Set in the same universe, but before the events I already know. He expected it wouldn't take nearly as long this time. I don't think taking a long time to translate to good work, he reflected, stating that the next one could be made in just 2 years. As for scope, he imagined something smaller but more detailed. As The Legend of Dragoon rewinds a lot of back and forth, he said, so the world will be smaller in the next installment. My goal is to make interactions, event and conversation between characters more intricate and detailed. The prequel has been envisioned, The Legend of Dragoon 2 will never see the light of day. The Legend of Dragoon, however, was not only bold on its visual or its combat system, it was also bold in its soundtrack. At the time where JRPG scores were almost exclusively composed in Japan by figures whose names were already mythic, Uematsu, Mitsuda, Sakimoto, Sony took an unusual step. They handed the musical identity to their most ambitious RPG project to a New York-based composer, Dennis Martin. Martin didn't come from the world of games, he came from club, studio, dance labels and jazz records. His world was eclectic, global. So why did Sony choose him? Part of the answer lies in the Legend of Dragoon identity. The team wanted something different, a score that didn't simply imitate the RPG of its era. Martin remembered sending in 2 demos without knowing anything about the project. The very first one, to his surprise, became the music of the opening CG movie, the beginning of what would later become one of the most iconic sequences on the PlayStation 1. I guess they were looking for a different twist, he recalls. His style wasn't typical game music, and Sony didn't want typical game music. They wanted atmosphere, tension, analog grit, and something that would feel both mythical and modern. Martin delivered exactly that. Working from New York, he built a soundtrack from sketches, storyboard, and descriptions sent across the world. When he flew to Tokyo for other work, he met with the director Hasabe and the sound team, reviewing early graphic and rough gameplay. The game grew up in front of him, evolving through emails, MP3, FedEx envelope, and late night sessions on digital performance and Pro Tools. But the process wasn't easy. PlayStation hardware imposed harsh limits. Logs out were impossible. Sustained couldn't exist. Everything had to be chopped, compressed, miniaturized. In a word, yes, he said when asked if hardware was restrictive. Yet in those constraints, the Dragoon soundtrack found its unique texture with stealthy motif, jet element and techno pulses. Some directive came from Sony, some from his collaborator Miratsu, and some from his own instinct, but together the soundtrack became a patchwork of style. Among all the tracks, one stood out to him, if you still believe, the game's vocals theme. He recorded strings and guitar in Tokyo, then returned to New York to finish the rest. Bass, percussion, sax, vocals. The singer, Elsa, had a presence he instantly recognized. She's amazing, he said. And yet, despite all the works, Martin never met Miratsu, the other composer. The game was simply too large to a single musician. Martin estimates he handled around 70% of the score. And as rumors of the next game circulated to early 2000, Martin heard whispers. All I ever heard, he admitted, is that some new character sketches are in existence. Today, he looks back at Dragons as unique, challenging and transformative experience, nothing like anything he had worked before. In a game defined by experimentation, Dennis Martin's voice became one of its boldest experiments, and more than 20 years later, his music is still one of the clearest memories players carry with them. Legends, once born, never truly die. They simply wait for the world to remember them. Thank you for watching.